Business Dialogues for Good, a series of inspiring conversations with business leaders dedicated to business for good. In these discussions, we explore successes, challenges, opportunities, and world-changing ideas. Join us, get inspired, and be part of the change.
Welcome to the Business Dialogues for Good Leaders. That is what we do here. We have always invited two leaders at the table to have a discussion about a topic that is important to all of us, to humanity and maybe to the whole world. And this fifth episode of the Leaders Discussion, the Leaders Dialogues, will be a discussion of the very important topic of water, how to deal with water, how to work with water as an essential element for humanity. And of course, with all the challenges that go along with talking about water and doing business. What I would like to start with is for you two to give a brief introduction of your company and your background before we go into the whole discussion. Anna, we start with you.
Okay, thank you. Well, my company started in 2015 because I saw that in the production industry for paper, there's not enough happening yet in terms of change. We use a lot of trees, a lot of water, a lot of energy, chemicals in the production process of paper, but the alternatives are already available. And we seem to have a hard time adopting those alternatives on a grander scale. And that is why I founded the company to showcase these alternatives to the world in forms of notebooks, for example, and that way to help scale the material. And that actually came from my personal dream to start a company that would change a part of the world for the better. And during my stay in China in 2010, I saw the great urgency that was felt there already to transition the production of anything really that we use. And that motivated me to start the company.
And Frank?
Yeah, iTeam Global was founded with the idea to make the life of the cleaner better. We are developing most of the time patented cleaning tools and cleaning machines. Let's say we are selling them around the globe. We are active in 80 countries around the world. Our motto is change the way you think about cleaning, and there is a statement in it that we think it can be done smarter, and we have the icons, how can it be faster, cleaner, greener, safer and better, and we incorporate them in the design of machines.
And do you think, Frank, that the life of the cleaner is getting better worldwide? Or do you?
Yeah, I would say yes, and that's mainly maybe not causing by us, because that would be too much. But I think there is a trend that the so-called night cleaning is shifted to daytime cleaning. So there's a lot of cleaning jobs are moving from the night to the day. So there is more visibility for the cleaner, let's say. I think also Corona has helped a little bit, let's say, to make what we call cleaning a kind of another value in the whole society process of cleaning for health. That's what I call it in my statement. So I think those two, shifting of the night cleaning to day cleaning and the Corona, let's say, have helped to make the cleaning more visible. So that's for sure a trend which is there in the world market.
Helpful. So thank you both for being here. We are going to talk about water. And as an introduction statement before I go to the two of you, what many people do not realize, I think, is that water is, well, first of all, essential for a human being to be alive. I think we even exist. Our body exists for maybe 90% out of water. And if we don't drink water for 2 days, we certainly will die. So water is essential. Many people in the world don't have access to clean water. Many people get sick by using water, but even in the Netherlands, the country that we are now in, it is very problematic with water, with pollution and how we can clean water. So from your backgrounds, having said this, maybe you can give your vision about the urgency, actually, that people, I think, don't feel. Well, definitely not in the Western countries, but definitely in the, let's say, many of the African countries, the urgency to manage water and especially clean water?
Yeah, I think sometimes we are overlooking the impact that we have with the products that we use on the water that we need to sustain ourselves. So when I look at the paper industry, we see that up to 10 liters of water, sometimes even 20 liters of water are used for the production of one A4 sheet of paper. And that is yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've been aware of the problems for a long time. I mean, in the industry, people know that this issue exists. And there is a semi-solution to have a closed loop of the water that's being used in the production of paper. However, this is an exception in the industry. So usually it's the water leaves the production facility and goes downstream in a river. That's why a lot of paper facilities are next to a river. And sometimes I get the feeling that when we don't see the pollution, it's not there. And it gets diluted, of course, in a big stream of water and rivers. And here in the Netherlands, we had the issue in the southern part of the Netherlands where all of a sudden there was a lot of PFAS in the water. Where did it come from, and how could we overlook that this is being dumped in our waters? Where's the urgency in that? And I feel the same for that in the paper industry. Where's the urgency to transition either away from using water in your production process, if possible, or making sure that the water is clean afterwards? Because there's a lot of innovation going on in how to clean water after that it's being used in a production process.
Yeah, and now if I look at you, Frank, you are in the cleaning industry, improving the life of the cleaner, and cleaning in the eyes of people like me and the audience uses water. So it's almost the prime basis of cleaning. So how did you tackle that? How did you look at it?
Yeah, I don't think we have tackled it, but we have created awareness. It starts with, I think, creating awareness. That's also what Anna is saying, and it starts with we have a program, a liter for a liter. It means that in the cleaning we're still using water, but we try to limit it to a minimum possible. So in our cleaning methods, we are using 60-70% less water as somebody else, let's say, but still water. And then we are offsetting that water with a liter for a liter program to give that water we have used, create new water somewhere else in the world, mostly in African countries, and we have used the 3 liter water today here. We give a 3 liter water into Africa, but there is a big misunderstanding also was with me. If we go to the Netherlands, what you just was say that the water and the river is coming into the play, and I say when I was building the new building, let's say at Flight Forum, our new headquarters. We have made a big pond, and under the pond we have made a kind of what I call a sinking bassin, let's say. And what did we do with that? We brought the rainwater back into the earth. And not into what I call the sewer system. But most of the people bring the rainwater into the sewer system, and then it goes away to the river, and it goes away in the sea, and the water is gone. And if the water is gone, you cannot retrieve it. And in this case, we retrieve it because we're bringing it back into the... So I also didn't have this in the top of my mind when I was making this what I call, on one hand, simple water bassin was not so simple as it sounds now, but anyhow, let's say, but this was the start for me also to think different about water, let's say, because I was also never educated in water. I thought also water needs to go from here, then it goes in the river, and then it goes in the sea, and that's a good process, but that's not a good process.
No, but that's what you said, that it starts with awareness, because this is also something that people can implement at home with the rainwater coming down and in the pipes in the ground, and it goes away. But if you have a
barrel or
a barrel, yes, and you can catch the water and you can water your plants or your vegetable garden.
At my homes, I have not barrels, but I have tanks for 5,000 or 10,000 liter, let's say, under the ground, let's say, where I can bring in the rainwater. And sometimes we have a lot of rain in a very short period, let's say. But then I can create for the whole summer. I have what we call my own water again, and I'm not using any water off the net, let's say, in total.
But now comes the, what I've learned from water specialists is that they say the amount of water on the planet is constantly the same. So it will not go away. It will either be in the sea, or it will be here, or will be there. But the amount of water stays the same. But it changes from, let's say, dirty water to water that is too far away from where people live. So only dirty water cannot be clean, so people get sick from diseases and infections in the water. So do you think that this is a more or less hopeless situation, because it's getting worse and worse, and unless people feel it, because what you just described as examples, I definitely think most people in the Western world have no idea. So how do we do that?
I don't think it's a hopeless situation.
Good.
No, there are a lot of technical solutions to make sure that we don't pollute the water that we have. We can recollect water that we need. We can store water, as we just discussed. But what I feel would be useful is to have a good regulation on how we deal with water also in the industry. Because what we see with some of the industries using a lot of water and not having any accountability on what happens to the water afterwards, or having the regulation from a local government that they can use up to a certain amount of water every year, and we never talk about not the end of life, but the circularity of that water. That's a missing link in the discussion about water that we currently see in the world, I think.
Yeah, but you see, first of all, I think we talk about the industry, but I would like also to talk about the consumer at home, washing machines and so-called microplastic filters, let's say, which can take already one of the biggest problems there is having the microplastic into the water, and you have to filter it out at the moment where it is.
Yeah.
It's your washing machine, and if they would say in Europe, you cannot sell any washing machines anymore without having that, and they can make that regulations overnight, let's say. Then we already have, let's say, one of the biggest pollutions out of the water is gone. The next thing then would be indeed what I call the rainwater, that everybody needs to collect the rainwater, no matter if they do that on their own premises or they do it on the collective premises, let's say, in new neighborhoods, let's say, is another thing. And then if we talk about the industry, for sure, let's say also there we need to do two things, and it starts with that an industry should not feel comfortable if they are not doing the things.
But the question to you, Frank, because you're now an industry, you're a company. So if you would do that actively, which you're basically also already doing with less % of water, your cleaning process, would that give you a competitive advantage? You do it because you're intrinsically driven, but other people, would they say, well, if I do that, then I sell more, or is that not?
Yeah, I think there will be certain regions in the world where that would be the case. Let's say, if you go now to Spain, and certainly if you go to the southern portion of Spain, you have periods from April onwards that people say, oh, you cannot do this anymore with water. So they are a little bit water conscious because they cannot do their fountains, they cannot do this, they cannot do that anymore, so they will be more open to adapt what I call water saving systems, no matter what they are, let's say. And if one of them would be cleaning on another method than saving water, they would be open for that. But I would say if I go with the same message to the Netherlands somewhere, then I don't think there will be any audience really looking at it.
No, because I'm trying to find the tipping point. When would people, because you also mentioned governments are not normally the leaders in change. And so when would we reach the tipping point, and maybe it differs per country, per region in the world, for people to start realizing that this is not so smart, the way that we're working with water?
It's an interesting question, because there's a lot of research being done in really heavy life events like hurricanes or forest fires, and to what extent do these influence people to start to think about the climate, or is it just at the moment you feel a certain urgency to stay alive, and afterwards there seems to be a mechanism where people still don't connect the two really enough. So this is a challenge, I think, for us as humans. How do we make sure that we convince enough people that this is really a connection that's valid. It's not something made up, that of the fires in California that we now see are connected to how we treat our environment. It's not a given that this happens to the world. And in South Africa, for example, you have a lot of droughts as well, same in Portugal, for example, caused by the eucalyptus plantations. But to make that connection that we could also do better and not have those problems, and it's in our hands, to me, that's the key that we are missing.
But I was thinking about, you have cleaning products, so to speak. You have books. On the front page of your book, I just saw it says, this book saved 11 liters of water. So I can imagine that if you realize the problem and you see your book and another book in a store, notebook, where you can make notes in, I would say, well, this book saves 11 liters of water. More than this, water is a problem, I buy this book. That is not the mechanism. And in your case, Frank, I would say, well, if you use 10% of the water used at another, in compared to another machine, we don't even have to think about it. We're going to buy your. That's also not the mechanism yet. So it is. Are people not realizing the seriousness of the problem?
No, because at this moment, I think you just said we are living in the Netherlands or we're living in West Europe, and there, I would say again, except Portugal, Spain, and some other countries, the water is not really on a high priority in the agenda, and it's not being spoken about in total. That's where the issue comes from, and the next issue comes from. I think that you see sometimes that people says, okay, why you need to shower for 15 minutes? You also can do it in 5 minutes. And you would save in the 10 minutes X liters of water, let's say. But it's not a general communication going around. And I said earlier already, it starts, I think, with the next generation or the generation after the next, the children and the children from the children, educate them in another way. And this audience, we will get to the audience as soon as we get what they call, I hope not, but as you said already, I also disagree with the statement that the water stays the same in the world, because there is a big difference between the water from a river and the water of the sea. And so the one water is, let's say, it's not the same, and you cannot use it the same way, because
no,
if you
that is true, Frank, what you now say. But the total amount, if it is,
yeah, okay, but if I have a total amount of 3,000 liters of seawater and I want to mix it with 3,000 liters of what we call river water,
true,
then I cannot produce the same things with that seawater versus with that river water. And then you get other things. You get more what I call artificial medicines, which are very difficult to remove out of the water. Let's say, because also that world has changed in the last 30 years. So now you get water, but the question is which percentage of water can be reused again. So I give you 100 liters of water here on this water refilter installation, and how much water comes out of it, which is drinking water.
Yeah, what's the quality of the water?
Yeah.
And who's responsible for the quality of that water? That is, I think, an important topic, because I feel that individual people, I just had a conversation about how far does the influence of one individual reach. I think our reach is pretty broad, but we have so many issues at hand at the moment that it is difficult to be like a perfect person and be accountable for every action that you take as an individual person in your individual household. However, what always gives me positive energy is the fact that as a grown-up in a business, you do have a lot of influence in how things are organized. And if every grown-up in the world would take on a relevant topic and try to move that in the right direction, first of all, we leave the world better for our children, and we don't have to stress about all the small steps that we need to take in our individual lives, because a lot of the things that we buy right now are not good for the world yet. And if I have to go to a store and make a decision for every product that I need to buy, it's too much. And that's why I feel the responsibility for what we can buy, what we can use, and how our houses are constructed, for example. should not be with the individual, but it should be with the company who's producing that and with the government who is essentially also, well, taking care of the people who live in the country.
But what are the biggest challenges, both to you, Frank, your company, and your company, Anna, as far as it goes to making your company more sustainable, maybe less water, and in comparison to your competitors, Frank? What are the main challenges you face? If water, Frank, would cost 10 times as much as it would cost now, because I think water in the Netherlands and in Western countries...
There's two streams of water, not the water you take and the water you are disposing, not. That's the two streams of water. And at this moment, there are
people don't think about what they dispose.
But there are countries in the world where you get both systems going. Let's say the water taking and the water, let's say, disposing. Let's say those countries are a little bit more successful because it double counts, let's say, and totally. The next thing would be the price of water. If the price of water would be, I would say, a factor 5 from what it is now, let's say, then it also would start to count. People say, oh, now I need to pay attention to it totally. I would say if you look back to fuel, if you go to fuel for cars, we had maybe, if we go to the guilder time, we had 1 guilder, let's say 50 euro cents for a liter, and now we're on €2. But you have seen a lot of smaller cars and a lot of more efficient fuel cars, let's say before the electrical cars came and so on. So on this way, the offset of what you could drive with the 50 cents or what you could drive now with the €2 is more or less the same as you would drive in the old days with the 50 cents. And so that drives efficiency into the process. And the same would happen then with water. Let's say people would then start to think about changing difference in water. You see it already a little bit happening in the washing machine industry. Let's say that you wash with less water, but at the end of the day, that water should be circulated. It should not be disposed, because you through a filter and it takes 30 minutes. I do not know how long it takes, and it goes through it, and then you use it again.
But would that help, for example, on your business? Suppose that your competitors, let's say the normal paper industry, suppose that they would have to pay for the water that they use. They already have to pay for that, but that they were asked to bring the water that they use back in the same format as they receive it.
It's a matter of regulation. I think it's not an ask, but it should be a demand.
Yeah.
That they take accountability for the leftover water, the wastewater.
And that also the PFAS that we just had a problem in the Netherlands that you mentioned earlier. If that company would have they pay for the water that they take in, and if they would have to bring it out in the same fashion as they take it in, fresh water, drinking water, it would become more expensive.
And maybe we would not have had the problem, because nobody wants that, because it costs a lot of money to clean that water. Yeah, and you know what's happened, which is positive in the paper industry in Europe, is actually there was PFAS being used in paper production as well, but that has been regulated out.
I see, Anna and Frank, two important things here. One is the realization of users of water, and two, try to make it circular, at least in your mind, so that the water that you take in, even me or you as a final consumer, on a toilet, basically, if you would say, well, your household is bringing this clean water in, you have to bring the same clean water out.
Yeah, I would say some water you could do more easy. If you would talk about toilet water, the flushing of the toilet water, you could make it, let's say, I call it grey water for a moment. But then the water which comes out of the toilet, it's more difficult to handle for somebody at home. Let's say, how can I handle that water? So that I would say, no. But in the washing machine industry, I think it's pretty simple. Let's say to have what I call a filter in it to take the microplastic out, and another filter to, let's say, regenerate. I call it regenerating the water, and that cannot be damn difficult, because people are sitting in the space. They're having refining water. They do it day by day. Yeah. So this cannot be that we do not know how to do this, and they can microscale it, let's say, in total. And I think washing machine is number one consumption of water in households. Next to it is the dishwashers, number two. So both of them, you could solve a lot of water already. And we talk about the shower, but I think we have two other ones we can more easily address.
And that's on an industrial level, you can make sure that every washing machine that will be sold has that filter implemented, right? So then even people at home don't need to have the extra burden of installing the filter themselves or taking out the water and putting it back in.
But that's how you get the adaptation, because people will adapt it then.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
Yeah,
at the end they will adapt it, because it can be produced on scale, it can be done, they do something for a good purpose, so people will adapt it, and you are solving a lot of issues
So what that brings me, Frank, to more or less the final topic, because if I listen to you, the question that almost comes up is, why then doesn't it happen? If you look forward in both of your companies, let's say 5 years, what kind of changes would you see in your worlds in the coming 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I would say number one is that I already see a trend. I just already said that the cleaners will get more visible, let's say, and that it will be what I call a kind of a career. So it's not that you are doing cleaning because it's left over, but you do cleaning, let's say, because it's a job you like to do, let's say. And I think we are on the way to get there. If you would talk about a 10-year period window, the next thing what I see is that they will pay more attention to, let's say, if it is fun, the process they have. So the tools, the machines they are using, let's say, they will pay, if it is more ergonomic, more fine-tuned to them, let's say, they will be voting for it, and they will get a vote in that process.
And you, Anna, will it become easier for you to sell your new paper forms?
I think so. The urgency for change is increasing in the world and in the paper industry also. So it's a good thing. 10 years ago when I started, there was no urgency. Now it's coming. And what's lacking is for people to want to take the risk of that transition. And when the urgency increases, people are willing maybe to take more risk for new innovations and to invest in new innovations, because we know what the alternative is and it's not looking good.
And to scale it so that it becomes price competitive. By the way, Frank, I think that if we make it circular in our minds, the water, or maybe not in our minds, but in reality, it becomes automatically more expensive to produce.
Regular pulp paper, yes.
We are working on systems to, we say we are still using water and we are dumping water still, let's say, but we are working on systems not to dump the water, but to recycle.
And that we will see more over the coming 5 to 10.
Yeah, that's what I expect to come. We will come out with it, I think, during this year, and there will be more following. Let's say, I think that process, because they will be forced by the market, I think. As soon as the market adapted and it doesn't cost them money, not at the end of the day, it sits in a device and there's no water used anymore, then it will help the storytelling for them. And I think that will happen.
Well, thank you, Frank and Anna. I hope that this 5th episode has bring a little bit more realization to the audience, maybe to the world in a small scale, that water is a critical element for living, for humanity, not only for humanity, but for all the living species on the planet. And there is a lot of thinking that needs to be done over the coming years, but we will work on that and we will come to realize that that is a necessity. So thank you again, and thank you for watching this episode of the Business Dialogue produced by Leaders for Good. And every month we have a critical business topic that we discuss with leaders like Frank and Anna this time, driven by a force for good. So, be inspired.